welcome. My name is Renee Galicia. I'm Executive Vice President of our Customer Advocacy Group here at Bright MLS. I'm joined by Brian Schneider, partner at Aaron Fox Schiff and Bright MLS Legal Counsel. And today we'd like to give you a quick summary of the upcoming changes related to the NAR settlement. First, to quickly summarize, the three main important changes of the settlement are: one, no offers of compensation will be allowed anywhere in the MLS. We're removing the compensation field, and offers cannot be made from broker to broker anywhere inside or connected to the MLS system. Secondly, a Bright disclosure form has been drafted and has been published to help protect you and allow you to comply with the settlement agreement, which requires that you provide certain disclosures to both your seller and your buyer clients. And finally, when you have a new listing, new buyer and purchase agreement forms that become available at your realtor associations, begin using those. Those have likely been updated with the changes to align with the settlement terms, and those have begun to be published by your forms providers. Brian, what other changes are coming up for August 14th?
So there's 5 rules in the settlement agreement that every real estate agent and broker that is a realtor needs to comply with to be covered by the settlement agreement. And you have to comply with all 5 of these to get that protection that the settlement agreement is intended to give you. You've got to have a buyer agreement signed before you take a client on a tour. You've got to stop making offers of compensation in the MLS. But if you're going to make an offer of compensation outside the MLS, which you are allowed to do, your seller client must first approve it in writing. Third, you have to disclose to buyer and seller clients that commissions are not set by law and are negotiable. Fourth, you cannot represent your services are free or available at no cost unless you actually are receiving no compensation from any source for the work you're doing. And last, you cannot filter or restrict listings that are communicated to a client based on any amount offered to the buyer broker. And then lastly, of course, in order to be covered by the settlement agreement, you actually have to be a realtor. You have to be a member of the realtor family by August 2024, at least by the class notice date, which is August 17th. Now, thinking about how that applies into the MLS, if we take away the offer of compensation in the system, there's going to be some changes to how brokers and agents use the MLS system to get paid. So under the old system, the seller would contract with the broker and pay the commission, which would then be split with the other side. And when you went to go to the MLS entry, you'd put in the listing information, and you'd often include a blanket offer to share with the successful buyer's broker. And then at closing, the seller would pay their broker and then typically also pay the buyer's broker. And the buyer would simply pay the sales price. Well, under the new system, as these things change with the new MLS rules, the buyer is also going to be signing a contract, negotiating the amount that their broker may earn from any source. When the listing broker enters the information into the MLS, they will not be entering an offer of compensation. They'll just enter the listing information. When it comes time for showings and negotiations, the buyer's broker absolutely can ask the seller's broker if any offer of comp is being made or if the seller's willing to cover the buyer broker fees, and that can be discussed. But more often, what we expect to see is that these conversations will happen in the course of the purchase offer. The seller is likely going to instruct their broker to say, the seller will absolutely consider any requests, just put them in a purchase offer. When the purchase offer then is made by the buyer will ask to have some portion or all of their buyer broker fees covered, and the seller and the buyer can then negotiate that in the purchase offer. So then when it comes time for closing, the seller will make a payment to their broker and perhaps to the buyer's broker based on those negotiations. And the buyer will pay the seller for the home and may pay anything that's left over that the seller was not willing to cover. And post-closing, those amounts are not directly specifically entered into the MLS, but any amounts paid by the seller as concessions, as a big picture, big bucket, will be entered into the MLS post-closing. So Renee, let's get into some more details about actually the requirements now for putting information into the MLS.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Since we're releasing updates to our rules in support of the NAR settlement, we're taking this opportunity to clarify the rules related to submission of listings and how Bright MLS is used to distribute those listings, if at all. Moving forward, as of August 14th, it's easier to think about the listing submission process as a two-step process. First, as you see here, simple question: do you have a listing agreement? Yes or no? If the answer is no, then the Bright MLS rules do not apply, and there's nothing to do. If the answer is yes, you do have a listing agreement in place, then the next question is, when did the seller instruct you to let potential buyers or renters learn about the property? If the answer is today, then you must then put that listing within 2 calendar days of that instruction. If the answer is a future date, maybe the seller needs some time to prep the property, you need to obtain photographs, any number of scenarios, but you have an instruction not to let others learn about the property until a point in time in the future, then you would have 2 calendar days from that future date to input that listing into the MLS. So again, two-step process. One, do you have a listing agreement? Yes, no. If you do, identify the period of time of when you're required to submit that listing to the MLS within 2 days. The next question is, how will you use the MLS based on your seller's instruction to distribute that listing, if at all? So really, there's 5 options here. Most of these are very familiar. You recognize them very quickly. The first option is kind of our standard or default, which is you've taken a listing, the seller says that they're ready for showings, they want the listing fully distributed on the internet to other subscribers, they want full marketing. So the typical process is that you would input it as an active listing with internet distribution set to yes. However, you still have the option to control that distribution of that listing if the seller identifies that the property is ready for showings, but they don't want the listing distributed to the internet for any number of reasons. Could be that professional photographs aren't in, the property is in stage, any number of reasons, any factors can apply, but the seller wants to withhold listing distribution from the internet, but they want you to share that listing with other subscribers. That's that second option where you can input that listing as active with internet set to no. All subscribers will learn about that property through the Bright system, but that listing information will not be included in the data feed until such time that you are ready. The third and fourth option relate to the coming soon status, where in the third and fourth option, the seller is not yet ready to facilitate showings or open houses or tours, but they do want the listing input into the MLS, and they may or may not want it distributed on the internet. So the third option there, the middle option, is inputting the listing as a coming soon status with internet set to yes. And then that fourth option is entering it as a coming soon status with internet set to no. The change here for the coming soon status is that we are removing the 21-day limitation on how long a listing can stay in the coming soon status. As of August 14th, moving forward, the sole question would be, if the listing is not yet available for showings, then you can keep it there. But if it is available for showings, you would be required to move that listing to an active status. So again, the sole question is whether or not that property is available for showings, open houses, or tours. Finally, the last option on this list here is, if you receive an instruction from your seller that they don't want the listing distributed through the MLS, you're still required to file the listing with the MLS, but you can input it as an office exclusive. Inputting it as an office exclusive satisfies the requirement to file the listing with the MLS. But moving forward, as of August 14th, there are no limitations on how you market that listing outside of the MLS. In other words, this is about filing the listing with the MLS, but if your seller has some sensitivities or safety concerns or privacy concerns, and they don't want that listing widely distributed to other subscribers or the internet, you can still file that listing and you can market it through your own mechanisms, whether through your brokerage network, through social media. As long as you have that seller instruction and you file that listing with the MLS, that's all you would need to do within the Bright system. Brian?
Lastly, you should know that Bright is here for you. There's lots of resources on Bright's website. You can see here the QR codes for each of the key sites. The first one, of course, is NAR's site, which has some great FAQs. They keep adding them every day as NAR members continue to ask more questions. Hopefully, folks are getting the answers they need, and this will be a resource for you as well. Thanks for joining us today. We're happy to help.